Hello, welcome to our webinar on elevating quality control, focusing on the build of corrective action and preventive action within Power Apps. My name is Steve Glasspool. I'm the Head of Consultancy here at Valto, based on the south of UK with my family and support the local team. In a previous role, I was a trained quality ISO 9001 auditor. That allowed me to perform internal audits within the UK, but also travel to France and Japan to perform some supplier audits. I'm also joined today by Harry.
Guys, I'm Harry. I'm part of the pre-sales team here at Valto for anything MS365 or modern workplace. As you can see, I'm very much into my sport as well as any outdoor activity. In fact, away from Microsoft at Valto, we've done some great things together, like the Three Peaks Challenge, Welsh 3000s, football tournaments. So it's awesome to be a part of that as well. And we post a lot about systems like this that we're going to go through with Steve today, as well as sort of the extracurricular activity that we do on LinkedIn. So feel free to connect with me from the barcode on the slide. Just to go over a little bit about Valto, I know a lot of you speak to Valto already. For a bit of background, we cover all things Microsoft and help organizations build intelligent workplaces across these 5 pillars, looking at SharePoint intranets and engaging platforms to manage services and security, as well as infrastructure and Azure. We'll focus quite heavily today on the business applications side of things with Steve, on the Power Platform, which is our largest business unit, through to our most recent pillar of AI and data as well. So I'll hand back over to Steve to take us through today's agenda.
Excellent. So yeah, looking at the agenda for today's webinar, we're essentially looking at why corrective action and preventive action systems typically fail within organizations. We're looking at ways we can actually streamline that process within the Power Platform. We're going to do a little bit of a live demonstration during that time as well, so you can see something in action. We're going to talk about why using Power Apps is actually beneficial for an organization and actually show you a success story and a case study of a previous client, one of many that we've delivered a quality management solution to. Right at the end, we'll talk to you about how you can get in touch and your next steps if you're interested in taking this forward. We're going to start our webinar by looking at the typical reasons why corrective action and preventative action systems and processes within an organization may fail. Why CAPA systems and processes fail. So firstly, let's look at what we mean by CAPA. CAPA actually stands for Corrective Action, Preventive Action. When we talk about corrective actions, we may be talking about fixes that we make if we identify an issue, be it with a process or with a product. As an example, within a supply chain, we might see that there's an issue with a product. This could be caused by the incorrect screws being used or maybe the incorrect process documents being followed. Therefore, we need to put a corrective action into place to fix this, be it printing out the most latest processes and procedures, or by changing the materials that are being used to put together that product. To understand what the corrective action needs to be, we'll go through a process of root cause analysis. This might be asking ourselves 5 whys, it might be going through 8 disciplines, but just looking at what's actually caused the issue. And then we understand what we need to correct. When we talk about preventive actions, we're talking about actions that will stop this from recurring in the future, or stop other issues occurring in the future. So we've talked about a potential example being that we would print out some new documents that show the current processes and procedures, and we make sure we keep them up to date. That's great for this corrective action, but what if we update the process again? We might fall into the same trap. Therefore, we may look at putting a preventive action into place, which is an automated notification to the supply chain manager every time a document is updated. Therefore, they'll be aware to print that document off, stop the supply chain, introduce that document to them, and then start the supply chain back up again. When we put preventive actions in place, we need to monitor those fixes. So it's all well and good saying that we've put an action in place and that's going to stop the issue from occurring. But what if it doesn't work? What if more issues occur? Or what if it only fixes 50% of the issues? Therefore, we need to monitor those fixes. And at a later stage, we need to verify that they're actually correct. And then we can take that off our list. This all goes together as part of a continuous improvement strategy within an organization. What we mean by this is that we'll continue to update processes, update our products, update our systems, so that we can continually make sure that the quality is at the forefront of everything that we do. Organizations have numerous different pain points, and these are some of the ones that we've came across when working with organizations out there during our workshops. We might see that there's a recurring set of quality issues. So the product is consistently incorrect, or things that are provided, be it documents, maybe continuously have spelling errors in place. This is poor quality, and we want to make sure that that's an issue that's resolved and it doesn't recur frequently. We may identify those issues and find that the resolution for the issues aren't quick. As we can imagine, if we were to shut a supply chain down because we had issues with a product, that's going to cause issues within the organization. So we want to make sure we resolve issues quickly. And if we're writing information into numerous different places, we might not be able to actually get the fix into place in a quick method. We may also have limited traceability. What this means is that we might have issues, but then we write them down somewhere and don't know where to find them. It might well be that we've got documents in place that we don't know where to find them. Issues with traceability means that if an auditor comes in, we can't show them an end-to-end process as to identifying the issue, correcting the issue, preventing the issue, etc. Another final pain point is lack of accountability. In some industries, there's a little bit of a blame game that might happen, and it may well be that the responsible party is the person on the supply chain, the engineer. It might be the engineering manager. It might be the document controller. And we don't have anyone that actually is taking ownership of that action and getting it fixed. They're all potentially pointing fingers at other people. Obviously, we don't want to get into the political side of things, but we want to make sure that someone takes accountability and someone fixes that process end to end, because quality is key. This also causes user frustrations in an organization. So there may be a lot of excessive admin work that takes place. This may well be that someone needs to fill in a paper-based form, and then they need to retype it into an Excel sheet, and they need to send an email, and they need to go and have a meeting. So all of this admin work can take time from someone's day. We may have unrealistic deadlines into place. So there could be an action that needs to be prevented or an action that needs to be corrected, and there's not enough time to do it. That's because there's not been a review of how kind of urgent the issue is, how big the issue is. It's just something that needs to get fixed really quickly. Confusing systems may be in place. So we've worked with a number of organizations that will have lots of different Excel sheets, and they don't know whether to open up Excel sheet A or Excel sheet B to log the type of issue. It may well be that people put issues into the wrong Excel sheet, for example, and therefore person A is looking to find the issue, but they can't find it because they're opening up a different sheet compared to where the person logged the issue in the first place. So there's just no consistency, no central area to monitor all the data. And finally, a little bit like I mentioned earlier in terms of accountability, it can create a little bit of a blame culture because, again, there's no one that's defined as the accountable person. Therefore, everyone can potentially point fingers at each other. So it's good to have a process in place so you know who is accountable, so that there's not an idea of blame. And again, quality is key. We're not trying to pick faults in people. We're just trying to find a quick and easy and efficient resolution to an issue that might have arisen. So if we do have poor quality management in an organization, obviously it's going to cause a cost. There's time and effort that will go into rework. This could be recreating documents. This could be recreating products. If these products get sent out to market, there could be an issue that you need to recall those products that can lead to damaged reputation, can lead to loss of money. You also have the issue that if you create, let's say, a full day of developing products, and at the end of the day, you notice that there's an issue with every product that you've developed, there's a lot of cost that has gone into putting all of those together. Potentially, you might save some cost by stripping them all down, or they might be things that need to go in the bin. So again, it's wasted funds. Lots of organizations will have lots of different legislations and regulations that they have to work towards. We can specifically imagine people that are building things for the aircraft industry, for example. So if there's any issues with what they're building, they might not meet those regulatory standards. This again could lead to poor reputation and might lead to a loss of contract with one of the big organizations that are purchasing these products that are being made. Again, with any damaged reputation, any issue with contracts that are in place, you might have restrictions in gaining new customers. Word of mouth can sometimes be very damaging to your organization. So again, you want to show that quality is key moving forward. So there's a few different features that you'd be looking for in a CAPA system. A few of them are listed on the page. We'll just pick a few of them out. So essentially, the priority item is to make sure that we're capturing any issues, capturing any data relating to the issues, any documents relating to the issue, and we're storing those and they're easily accessible. All of these will have a history to them, so we'll be able to see, any updates, any changes, and we'll be able to see any associated actions. All of the actions can be assigned to people with automated workflows and notifications that will define, who does that action get given to? If the action's not complete on time, shall we warn someone? Shall we escalate that email if it's been missed, 2 or 3 occurrences? We'll also look at controlling any access to the system, so we'll make sure that there's various role-based security into place, so who can add issues, who can edit issues, etc. We can also then look at reporting and dashboards. What do we get out of the data moving forward, so we can start to make fact-based decisions? So has there been 20 issues logged every summertime? If so, is there an issue in the summer compared to the winter? What is that issue? Let's look at the root cause analysis and then put a fix into place to resolve that. And again, all of this should be able to be done on multiple different devices, so be it a desktop PC, a tablet, a mobile device, so anything should be quite responsive down to those devices. So obviously at Valto, our tool of choice is looking at Power Apps. Power Apps, you've got a license of £4.10 per user per month. This is if you're utilizing Dataverse in the background to store your data. In most cases, organizations will be using this, but there are occurrences where we do build and use SharePoint as a data source, especially for some of the smaller organizations that aren't logging too many issues each month and each year. So again, maximum kind of cost, you're looking at £4.10 per user per month, but you could be looking at using Power Apps for SharePoint, which will typically be included within your, let's say, E3 license or Business Premium license that you've already got in place. You need to consider the initial cost of build and deployment. Any system that you go and purchase typically always has a deployment cost into place anyway. You may need to integrate with other systems that you've got into place. So you might need to integrate your issue tracking with some of your financial systems because it might relate to your bill of materials, for example. You might find that there's systems out there. If you purchase a separate system, and you'll see that we've got a few different examples at the base of the slide here. If you purchase one of those systems, you might find that you're actually paying to use 100% of the system, but you only actually need to use 60% of it. So my recommendation when you look at Power Apps is that actually you can build something which is more bespoke for your organization, and you're making sure you're getting something which fits the purpose and fits your exact goal, rather than taking a what I call a square peg round hole situation. So having to change your processes for a tool that you've purchased, or having to buy a massive tool and only use 2 or 3 pages within that tool. It feels a bit redundant if you're doing that. Any solution will have its support and maintenance costs as well. If you're buying multiple different solutions for different purposes, you're having to pay cost and maintenance for all of those various different tools. So as part of an IT strategy, we'll work with a lot of organizations that push everything to Microsoft 365. For example, we worked with a council that they had probably around 125 different systems in the business, and quite early they managed to reduce that by 50% by cancelling lots of contracts and actually building the systems within Microsoft 365. Moving forward, as part of their tenders, they made sure that any integration was in place with Microsoft 365, or the tool was actually based on Microsoft 365. So again, this is a great place to be in moving forward. As we can see, we've got approximately sort of £9 to £20 for various different sort of ISO and quality tracking tools out there as a per user per month basis. So Power Apps actually works out really cost effective for what you want to do. It ensures that you've got all the features that you require. You can use 100% of the features. It's built specifically for you, and it's a cheaper cost. So it's certainly what we would recommend moving forward to manage your quality systems. If you are interested in looking at Power Apps, we do offer a Power Platform scoping workshop. This is something that myself and my team deliver. The idea of the workshop is that we can come into your organization, be it spend time with you over a Teams phone call or spend time with you on site. It's paid for exercise. It allows us to run through your existing ways of working. It allows us to show you the art of the possible in terms of what can be built within the Power Platform or within SharePoint or the modern workplace within Microsoft 365. We'll understand your goals and objectives. We'll capture all of your requirements, and we'll come back to you with an indication of what a solution can look like moving forward with its cost. We'll also look at phasing these solutions if required. So again, if budget is key, we can look at a phase 1, a minimum viable product, and then move into phase 2, phase 3, so you have more of a strategy moving forward. Now that we understand some of the pain points and user frustrations behind a corrective action and preventive action system, and why these systems may fail within your organization, we can move on to take a look at the way in which we can streamline the CAPA process, specifically using Power Apps. In this demonstration, we're going to be taking a look at our audit and CAPA management platform built within model-driven apps. Within this platform, we have a number of different admin lists which are going to support our audits and corrective actions that we put together. The first of which is our ISO standards list. And within here, we can see all the various different ISO standards that we're going to be auditing against. For example, we have ISO 9001 quality. If I jump into this standard, we'll see information about the standard itself and who owns that standard within the business. And then we can see all the various different clauses which make up that standard. When performing audits, we might audit against the full standard, or we may just be auditing against one particular area of the standard, for example, document management. We also have a number of areas that we can set up. Areas are based on various different locations, departments, or functions within your organization. So, for example, we may have a location such as a particular office that we're going to be auditing, really handy for a health and safety audit, for example. We may have a particular department, so we might just be auditing finance or IT. We may have a particular function, so rather than just auditing finance, we might specifically just be auditing payroll. And in that scenario, that might be a mixed function, which is between HR and finance. Or we might just be auditing one particular process, so in this scenario, project delivery. By having our standards clauses and areas set up, it allows us to go and generate an audit. If we click into the active audits area, we're able to see all the various different audits that we have within the system. We've already created one, so I'm going to jump into our headquarters surveillance audit. And in this scenario, we've got an audit set up, which is going to be a health and safety audit of our headquarters. We can see the audit name and the owner, so who's responsible for this audit. We can see the date it's going to take place and any notes related to it. We then have a number of different subgrids, and this is where we can pull in information from the various lists that we just looked through. In this scenario, we've got our areas that are being audited. So we can see that we've got all the various areas of the headquarters, so south wing, ground floor, warehouse, etc. And these are going to be contained within the ISO 18001 audit. We can also see our various different clauses that are being audited against. So once again, we can see this is ISO 18001, which is health and safety. And we could be auditing against the full clause, or it may well just be one or many of these items that we're auditing against. We can also add one or many participants to the audit. If we click on New Participant, we've got the ability to use a quick create form to enter various different participants. These users will be users that are part of your organization. So it may well be that you've got a quality manager, a health and safety manager, etc., that you're speaking to, so you can keep a log of everyone that was included within the audit. As we move down the page, we can now log our non-conformities and improvements. So these are items that may come out of the audit. Once again, if we click New Improvement, we'll have a quick create form, and this is where we can go and log those items into place. We've already got one set up here. So again, as it's a health and safety audit, we've got a particular action. In this case, fire exit was obstructed. So this is a non-conformance that needs to be fixed. So we've logged that item and we've logged the owner of that item. So this is the person that's responsible for that. We've populated the improvement description. So what we found and what needs to be changed. And we've logged the improvement type. We may have a minor non-conformance or a major non-conformance. This might dictate the timescales in which you need that to be fixed. And we can also log an opportunity for improvement. What we mean by an opportunity for improvement is something which isn't necessarily a non-conformance and isn't going to affect your certification status with ISO, but it is something that auditors like to see that you're logging for continual improvement moving forward. We can define our due date, and then we can put our information about what was located. The way we capture information here is using a system known as PERI, which is point, evidence, requirement, and impact. Essentially, the point is what needs to happen. So in this scenario, we need to make sure we're not obstructing any entryways or fire exits. We need some evidence, so that might be a photo or an idea of what's happened. So in this scenario, desks were stacked in front of a fire exit. We can take the requirement, and that requirement comes out of the ISO clause. So we can say in ISO 18001, a particular clause defines that all routes in and out of the building must be clear of obstructions. And we can take a look at the impact. So if we don't do anything, what's the cost to the business, what's the issue with this scenario. It could be risk of injury within the business. Within this page, we can see that we've got a business process flow at the top here. This business process flow allows us to move through various different stages. So we've got an item which is created as new, and we can see all the various different fields that must be completed before I can move on to correcting the issue. As an example here, if I was actually to delete our title, you'll be able to see that I've got some validation rules into place there. So I need to have that improvement name into place. If we're at the correction stage, for example, we can go and input our corrective action statement. And once again, we need that to be filled in before we could move to prevention. So we can say fix a thing, and we can move it on to prevention. So that's going to set it to the next stage. In this business process flow, we can have various different triggers set into place. So we have notifications that are sent when we move something from new to correction and correction to prevention. We also can have various different tasks that are set up. So for example, someone may be responsible for the correction, someone different may be responsible for the prevention, and then when we move it to verification, it would come back to the auditor, and the auditor would need to do a check to make sure what changes have happened have actually fixed the issue in the long run. So that might be a month later, 3 months later, for example. We can see a resolutions tab in place here. So a lot of the fields in the business process flow are also reflected within the screen. So we can see our corrective action statement. So that may well be move the desks from in front of the fire exit. We've got our preventive action statement, and that may well be that we need to put better signage up on the door that says do not block fire exits. We might need to update the policy, and we might need to run some training. And then we've got our verifications in place, which will be the auditor going back in and saying, I can see signs on the door, I can see that no fire exits are obstructed, I've checked the training records and I can see everyone's had fire safety training in place. Yes, we can close this action down, everything's all been correct. We also have a timeline into place, so we can, if we wish to, enter various different notes into place here, and we can pop some updates with some information in, and we can add a note. So we can essentially get a storyline, which is really great if we've got an auditor sitting in front of this system and the fix hasn't been fully completed. We can show all the various different updates that have happened to actually show the auditor that we're moving towards a correction versus an auditor thinking that actually you've logged it, but you've not done anything about it. So that gives a quick whistle-stop tour of our audit system. If you want to know more, then please do reach out to us. We can set up some demonstrations of the system with yourselves, and we can also talk through your needs and any kind of bespoke requirements that you may have to align the auditing system with your current processes. I'd like to share with you one of Valto's many success stories. This success story is focused on how a lighting system designer and manufacturer improved their corrective action and preventive action traceability and their time to fix issues by utilizing Microsoft Power Apps. Our initial engagement with this organization came through their quality manager, who we've engaged with previously, and we'd actually delivered our control document system to them. That had improved their policy management and their work instruction and standard operating procedure management. And they next wanted to move on to improving the way that they maintain their actions within the organization. So we engaged with the organization by delivering a Power Platform scoping workshop. Within this scoping workshop, we delivered them the art of the possible and live demonstrations. We understood their existing pain points and their existing ways of working. And we also worked through engineering their requirements so that we could provide them a workshop report that defined the cost of the solution moving forward. So initially from that workshop, we started identifying the challenges within the organization. So we can see the challenges listed on the screen. This relates to typical challenges that organizations face, such as having quality issues that continuously recur, having CAPA actions that last on the list for a very long time and never get closed out, which is not good from an auditing perspective. They were unable to trace who was responsible for different actions and who was accountable for them, and in some cases couldn't even track the actions as being logged anywhere at all. And the reason for this is just because of their data being spread in multiple different locations. There was various different Excel spreadsheets, various different versions of the spreadsheets, all saved on the servers rather than in SharePoint. And there was a number of items that were logged on paper-based forms and that may have just not even made their way into the centralized Excel spreadsheet, or at least one of the versions of the spreadsheets. So based on those challenges, we came up with a set of objectives. The key objectives for our organization was to develop a user-friendly application. We defined this as being a Canvas application due to licensing and using SharePoint as the background, and not hitting any data limits that required us to move into model-driven applications. This app was to manage non-conformances. It was going to manage accidents and also safety observations in the business. We had to be able to track these non-conformances right the way through from initial findings, all the investigation data being captured, and the effectiveness review. So we had to make sure that we identified why the issue happened, what the issue was, how the issue was going to be fixed, and maintain that the actual issue or the resolution that was put in place did actually fix the issue sort of 3 to 6 months later. We had to track health and safety items as well, so we were tracking accidents, incidents, and near misses. And as mentioned earlier, we looked at safety observations as well, and these were observations that were made and captured that may have led to an accident, so they wanted to have early intervention and make sure that they were logged. As one part of the workshop and work putting the report together, we did a lot of work around process mapping. So we can see some very complex processes and flow diagrams on the screen here. This is a real effective method to understand the kind of end-to-end process, which actors, we would call them, would be involved, so which departments, which users, any kind of key questions, decision points, etc. So we put together this process because this actually defined all of the background logic in terms of how the application would function and also how the various Power Automate processes would automate these activities moving forward. So we can imagine that when we wrote this process map, standard process was lots of manual emails, lots of manual paper-based forms being filled in, multiple handoffs, and that all leads to inefficiencies within a business. So we mapped that all out and then defined how the solution could improve upon that. We moved into a development lifecycle, so we looked at wireframing applications and then building out the application because it covered lots of different steps, all defined by these various different buttons on the left-hand side. So there's various different data and steps and different people that would have access at different periods of time and different process controls. So we saw from the earlier process map that there's lots of people involved and lots of variations and various decision points, and this was then all mapped across to an easy to use user interface that could work on tablet and mobile devices as well. So if we look at the results, all the data was all stored centrally. So essentially the issue around traceability, the issue around auditors coming in and not sort of seeing the latest improvements was gone. There was one central location that the quality manager and health and safety manager could access, and they could see all of their data listed there. They could also report on that data as well. Any actions that were logged would have various notifications that go along with them. So at the point of logging, it would notify users, depending on the way the data was logged. So if it was an issue that meant they had to stop the supply chain, it would notify, senior management at that point. So people were notified immediately in terms of their, SLAs and actions. If actions were missed or were not complete by the set time frame, there would be notifications that would be sent out. These would also have management escalation. So a task that was missed would go to, let's say, myself and my manager. But I would also have notifications of 90 days, 60 days, 30 days before that action was due to give me every opportunity to make sure it was complete and make sure that I've fed back to my manager before it getting to that escalated point. We did some work with them about sort of a few months later to look at some of their sort of reporting in place, and we looked at some of the results that they had. So they actually brought their SLA time, which was their initial response time, down from 3 days to 1 day. Now, the key reason for that was that rather than filling in a paper-based form, popping it in someone's in tray and waiting for that data to be logged on Excel and someone to be sent an email, it was actually logged immediately, sometimes on a tablet app whilst on the supply chain floor, and then would actually send an email notification to the relevant personnel, be it managers, be it the process owner, immediately, so that they could actually action that within the day. If that wasn't actioned within that day, there'd be other further notifications. So again, would not get as bad as 3 days, but if it was 1.5 days, your manager would know about it. So that was key. We also ran some user satisfaction surveys. So when we initially engaged with the organization, we found that there was very poor utilization, or maybe not poor utilization, but people were unhappy with the system. They'd rather not use it. They knew they had to use it, but they weren't happy with the multiple bits of data entry that they had to do. They weren't happy with the fact that they were adding stuff to a spreadsheet and then finding that that was in the wrong version. They had to re-add it again, or that their data was lost. So we did manage to increase that score just over a 3-month period from 45% to 87%. So again, still room for improvements there, but we are working with the organisation on some further additions to the application that they're looking to make moving forward. Once again, we delivered this as initial phase 1 to tie in with controlled documents, and they are going to be looking at further phases as well. Within the time since working with them, they have had further ISO accreditations. So they've had recertification audits and surveillance audits. They've passed those with flying colours, whilst the system has been in place as well. So here at Valto, we're really happy with that, because obviously when you're building a quality management system, you want external quality auditors to appreciate that system that's in place and continue to deliver the organisations we're working with their ISO accreditation and standards.
Steve, there are some common questions and challenges we're actually seeing daily from quality and IT leaders around this. One of them being sort of, how do you get the leadership buy-in for investing in a better CAPA system as a whole?
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, great question. So in terms of the leadership buy-in, again, typically they don't have too much time. So what I like to say is, you need to start looking at demonstrations. You need to start sort of showing them the art of the possible, show them what good looks like. Hopefully this webinar is a good starting point. But of course, moving forward, you may want to start with a MVP, or what we know as a minimum viable product. So we don't want to try and build everything at once, but we want to build out core parts of the solution. Then your leadership team can start to see that in action, and then they may buy into it and want to add more over time. The other side of things is looking at building out a business case. Why would a CAPA system actually improve your organization? And the best way of looking at that is actually, what's the cost of doing nothing? Because if the cost of doing nothing is quite significant, and it's a lot higher than the cost of actually building out your MVP, then that gives you a good reason to actually start going down that journey. So they would be the core things, I think, Harry, for your leadership team buy-in.
Yeah, and you mentioned business improvements there. A conversation I was having the other day was around relevancy, really, and almost how you ensure that a CAPA system like this can stay relevant as processes and regulations almost evolve.
Yeah, that's it. Especially in the ISO world. I mean, ISO 9001 has gone through numerous different iterations, and there's obviously a lot of certifications out there and a lot of different certifying boards also. The key thing we try to do with our systems is keep things as configurable as possible. So we like to use kind of variables in places. We like to showcase areas within the system where the actual organization themselves can make updates. So again, in our CAPA system, we allow you to add in your certifications and your clauses. And again, that might differ by organization. The other side of things is just looking at the governance. So it's all well and good that the system allows you to update things, but how do you make sure people actually go in and they actually do update those? So putting together a sort of quality committee, meeting maybe sort of every quarter, running through what you've got, and making updates, listening to user feedback, etc., can be really critical as well for the system. It's a dynamic system. You need to keep it up to date.
And people sort of keeping that up to date as well. How can we, or how can they themselves encourage, or can the CAPA system itself encourage those people to be more proactive rather than what we see a lot is a reactive approach to quality management?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of questions there. In terms of the way we can support, we have a lot of kind of maintenance agreements in place, so we can work with organisations and we can actually perform some of the updates for them. So we've got a number of organisations that do sort of tie in with us, and they don't have their own IT team, and we are their IT team. We support them. So that can be a really good connection, a really good partnership moving forward. If internally they've got the option to actually update things themselves, then they can absolutely keep things proactive. They can set regular occurrences of updates they want to make, but also the system itself can sort of tell them when to make updates. It can potentially send out notifications. Again, we see notifications about when an upcoming audit is due, when a corrective action might be overdue, for example. So by having the system provide those warnings and provide those notifications, it does allow people to be proactive. So rather than hearing from an external auditor that they're going to come along in 2 weeks' time to actually audit us, we know 90 days in advance, and we've got everything all prepared, ready for that time. So we're not kind of scrabbling around the day before an audit, which is something I've seen a lot of organisations do, I must admit.
Yeah, that reminds me as well. A lot of people speak to us about the data itself,
Mhm.
and where we'd recommend or where it actually is held.
Yeah, so everything's in Microsoft 365. So it's all within an organization's tenant. So we'll store the data in Dataverse, or we'll store it in SharePoint, again, depending on the kind of licensing that's required and depending on the size of the organization, the amount of data that's being stored. But the one key message is that we don't hold the data at all. We don't want to hold and be responsible for your data. We don't want organizations to have to be going into some other third-party system to get at the data. It's their data, they own it, they look after it. We just essentially deploy the system into their tenancy so they can work it with that data in a much better way. It also avoids any issue of, let's say, an Excel sheet which is stored on someone's laptop and the laptop gets left on the train and it's gone. All of
Right.
this stuff is backed up. It's all supported in the 365 infrastructure. And we offer also other sort of backup solutions as well if that's required. But yeah,
Okay.
key thing, we don't look after the data. The organization owns it.
Right. And for further strategy, I guess, and decision making can that data from the CAPA systems be leveraged in any other way beyond compliance?
Yeah, so a couple of different routes. First route is looking at the Power BI side of things. So Power BI is, again, part of the Power Platform's business intelligence, all about having your data kind of visualized, allowing people to drill into that data and make what we call kind of in the auditing world as fact-based decision making. So the idea is that we're actually making decisions based on the factual data you've got. We're not just storing data for the sake of it, and we're actually forecasting what things look like. So as an example, we might be storing some lessons learned, or we might be storing sort of issues, and we might find that the largest issue that we have is around training. So, okay, that's great. We can train our staff that we've got now, but we might hire another 10 staff in over the next 6 weeks. So we actually want to put a process in place that means for each of those staff members that come into the business, we're starting to train them as part of their onboarding package. So that's a fact-based decision. We've looked at the data, we've looked at the facts, and we've made a decision moving forward. And then as we monitor that data, we should see the training issues come down. And then at that point, potentially another issue takes over and you do the same process again. So it's all part of that kind of continual improvement within an organization. The final piece I'd say on that is looking at the AI side of things. Obviously, AI is sort of taking over the world at the moment. All this data can support the intelligent workplace. And just being able to have that data at your fingertips and being able to run sort of AI models against it. And again, it's another service we offer. You can actually start to kind of forecast or potentially ask questions and sort of what if scenarios. So if I was to change X, Y, Z, what would the result typically be based on the historical data that I've got? And you can start to get that AI model to present that back to you. So it's another great way of using the data.
No, that makes sense, and I appreciate you answering it like that. I'm sure it helps quite a lot of people that are coming across the same challenges and
Yeah,
questions within their organization.
excellent. Yeah, and if there's any other questions that come up at all that we don't cover here, of course they can reach out to us, can't they, Harry? And we can get on a call and answer those questions in person as needed.
Absolutely.
That concludes today's webinar. Thank you for listening.
We are currently doing some complimentary consultations and demonstrations about this system, how it ties in quite nicely with your current quality management system as well. Feel free to reach out to me with the details provided on my email or phone, or click the link in the description below. Thanks again for listening, and I hope to speak to you soon.